welcome to another A+ sim racing video, continuing the custom championship, this time at Portimao. It's a 15-minute race plus 1 lap and a mandatory pit stop of, I think I set it to 5 seconds. So I'm going to change the fronts and then back out.
15 minutes.
So here we are on the grid, waiting for the lights.
Okay, Captain Sloth, stay calm, focus.
And we're off. A little bit of wheel spin there.
Car left.
See the car behind in the mirror getting pretty close there, but we hold the position.
Left side.
Try to close that gap on the turn.
Hold your
There we
line.
go.
Still there.
Move up a couple of positions into the next heavy
Car
braking.
left.
Notice there's a few
Still there.
areas of this track the AI is slow on the heavy braking, but there's a couple of faster turns that they carry more speed through, so I'll be trading off losses and gains throughout each
Car
lap.
left.
I'm going to give that position back because I was outside of the line.
Still there.
That opens up a gap for that car that almost took that position back.
Left.
And I struggle with this turn, but it's lap 1, so I'm going to try and dive in while the tires are fresh.
Hold your line. Still there.
Followed by this turn complex here. There's a turn coming through the uphill, and then another 2 turns to get out of that complex there. And the AI always seems to be able to overtake me there when we're neck and neck. Taking that spot back from the AI. Coming up to the last turn complex in the lap. And this is where I have an advantage, having heavier downforce setting, only a little bit of a lift, really closing the gap on the cars in front. And let's take another look at that lap from the TV cam. Starting in P10. A little bit of smoke off my tires there. That was me with the wheel spin. Holding position into the first turn. Then moving up 2 more positions through this turn there. Almost losing those positions again. I'm going to fight for them throughout the stretch and then into the hairpin. See, I'm just outside of track limit, so I have to yield to that car. Almost losing my position to the green and white car that took advantage of the gap I left. Coming up the inside. You'll notice throughout the race I have a hard time in that turn section there. Coming into this turn as well. I'm going to have to figure out how to adapt my driving line throughout the race to overtake and defend in those sections. Getting my position back here on the inside, coming up to the end of the lap. You see how close he gets on my rear there, closing the gap right down to nothing. And then I open it right up again, and this turn and the next one. Alright, jumping back in the driver's seat, continuing on in lap 2. There we go.
P6.
Now in P6. Not bad. Moved up 4 positions in the first
side,
lap.
Clear left. On your left. Clear left. Pit window opens in 2 minutes. Come on, Captain Sloth. Nicely done.
See if I can close that gap into the braking zone in the hairpin. I notice I can always outbrake the AI here. They seem to brake a little bit heavier earlier and not trail braking into the turn. So I almost overtook both of them just because of the braking. This is probably my weakest area in this track. I usually race on the GP. Oh, you can see I stepped it out there. Didn't quite spin, but lost those 2 positions again. Not very good at this turn either. I'm also not as familiar with the FR3 car. I've only raced a few times with it, done some laps. Not very experienced with it. As I was saying, I'm more familiar with the GP layout in this track, so there's one section that gets cut off, and the replacement is the downhill right-hander that I'm not very good at. But between these sections where the AI is faster and where I'm faster, I'm making up the difference quite nicely.
Car left. Clear left.
Moving up now, I think, to P4.
0.80, you're the man, stay on it. P4.
So P3 right in front of us, and you can see those two cars fighting. That's P1 and 2 there.
Side. Clear left. Good pass.
They seem to have a much better pace than the rest of the pack, so I should expect this to be a little bit more challenging to get in front and stay in front over the next few laps. And there's also the mandatory pit stop, so you never know how it's going to go. Someone might decide to wait till the end, so I might pit early, get caught up in traffic. There's no need for a pit stop in the 15-minute race. There's no lacking of fuel capacity, there's no extensive tire wear. I just wanted to throw something extra into the mix. And I don't do a lot of racing that requires a pit stop, so it's a skill that I'm lacking. So I figured I'd add it in and work on that skill set, have a little bit of excitement and shake things up a little bit, because you never know how the race really turns out when you have a pit stop involved. You could end up getting a drive-through penalty for speeding. Your pit stop could take a second longer than you were expecting. You have a poor pit entry. Now we're up in P2. Taking a peek into turn 1. Got a lot of speed advantage on that straight because of the downforce setup coming out of the last turn. There we go. That was a lot faster than I thought it would be getting up into P1. I thought it would take an extra couple of laps. But now I have to try and defend it. Now I've got the upper hand here. I'll gain a bit of time coming through the hairpin and exiting, but I'll lose that time in the next two turns. Or next two turn sections, I mean. Open up a gap here. We got the blind turn here. Right hill, or right hand downhill. So that's one. There's the next turn coming uphill here, and there's this turn followed by another one right here. So that's the 4 turns in a row that I have difficulty with. I lose a lot of time. You can see it right on my tail there. Not so great at this turn either, but just good enough to keep in front. I can defend my position. I run wide here. That's not good. They both dive in.
Clear right. Come on, don't let him get away.
Gonna have to fight for those positions at the ground. Oh! He did a big lift over that crest there. Was not expecting to move up so fast. I gave him a little bit of a bump. I don't think there's any damage though.
You're now in the lead. We're quickest at the moment. That lap time was 1:36.
Damage is set to full, but the damage model in this is a little forgiving.
We've been warned about track limits.
So back up in first position. A little bit aggressive on that sausage curb there. This is where I have an advantage. I can brake deeper, trail brake, which I don't think the AI is doing. Get a better turn exit. And use that gap to my advantage, because this is where I'm weak right here, these next 4 turns. I try modifying my line throughout the race to try and improve. I think maybe I make a little bit of gains by the end of the race. Having a good turn exit here is very crucial, but holding a lot of speed through that downhill, the road just falls away from you, and it's really easy to step it out, and you find yourself facing the wrong way real fast. This is the other difference between the Grand Prix and this layout, is the Grand Prix has the longer sweeping right-hander at the end, and this variation has a sharper turn. Alright, so the number 2 car has gone in the pit. I think he's going for an undercut, so we're gonna go in the pit at the end of this lap and try and push real hard. Get the most out of these tires that we can. They're not lacking in grip. As I said earlier, pit stop is just there to shake things up and add a little more excitement and to develop that part of my racing craft. I'm not good with the pit stops. I've turned off the AI in the pit lane, so it's completely manual. And I forgot to practice my pit stop during practice session, so we'll see how this goes.
Closing in 2 minutes.
Trying a couple of different variations through that turn section to see if I can carry more speed on the exit and not lose that gap to the cars behind. One of which isn't technically right behind me because of the pit stop. We'll see how that plays out at the end of this lap. I think I engaged the pit limiter just a bit too soon there, too early on the brakes. I lost a bit of time to the car behind. But I really didn't want to get the drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane because that is much worse. I'll have to practice that, the pit stop there, and push the braking to the limit and not get a penalty. Changing the fronts and then we'll get back out.
Just 5 minutes left. Hold your nerve. We can win this. Pit window closing in 1 minute.
Looks good.
Your exit is clear. Watch the white line.
We're on our way. Still in first.
Left side, clear left.
Oh no, what's this? We lost the position. Let's take a look at that on the replay. Coming out of the pit. Still in the lead, and he comes around the outside. We've lost position. Let's go back and try and regain that. Oh, forgetting that I have fresh, cold tires on, missing my brake point there. And they, of course, already have a lap on their tires, so they're nice and warm, optimized. Still able to close some of that gap on the braking. Probably lose a little bit of time in this section here, as I usually do, overshooting it a little bit, late on the brakes. Could have been worse.
Pit window is closed. Push, push, push. We're in with a chance of winning this.
Trying to go up on the inside and lacking that exit speed. Carried too much speed into the turn, had to brake heavy. He got away from us again. Now you can see I'm starting to panic and making sloppy mistakes, missing that apex by a mile because of late braking. Not taking this turn very good. He's opening up that gap, but I will close it right here. Close it a little bit more right here. Really coming up behind fast, overtaking on the main straight here. And we are once again in the lead before the end of the lap. Huge advantage with the downforce setting. Of course, I'm not able to take full advantage of it in some of the turns that I'm not as confident with. Need more practice in some of those sections, but more than make up for it in the last turn and in this hairpin. Just continuing to open up that gap, heavy on the braking. Trail braking now on the throttle. Open up that gap a little bit more. Just gotta be careful. Push where I know I can push and be careful where I'm not so confident.
Sector 2 time is good.
better than the previous lap. Bringing it a little bit tighter to the apex, probably carry a bit more speed through that section.
2 minutes to go, 2 minutes.
I think that was an improvement. Opening up that gap even more on the straight as we start another lap.
All three sectors are pretty quick.
Only a few laps more, I think, from this point. Have to run out the clock and then do one final lap after the clock is run out.
You're in the lead.
Into the hairpin once more. Really trying to find a rhythm through these turn sections here. Oh, stepped it out again, but didn't spin.
Incident in sector 2. Sector 2
Kept
is
it
yellow.
facing the right
Clear
way
left.
forward, and we lost that front position. Gonna have to fight for P1 once again. Really messing up that turn, almost going out of track limits, just keeping it in. That gap is really opening up, but I'm confident we can close that gap on the final 2 turns of each lap, plus the hairpin. I'm not worried about losing the race here. Just gotta stay on it.
Right side. Clear right.
CP3 is right up behind me, but we'll open that gap up here. A little more right here. Start closing the gap on P1. Maybe even get in the slipstream before the end of the straight.
P2.
Not quite. They're getting defensive, taking the inside line. Try and go up the inside and is braking here.
Clear left.
Lock up a little bit,
Car right.
and they've taken the position back. Probably not going to get close enough to make a move here in the hairpin. Really close that gap. See what I can do in the next few sections. Just stay close. I don't know if I'll be able to get a front. Falling behind in this section here. Trying my best to keep on it, but not losing control. You don't want to buckle under the pressure, because you don't want to lose all the hard work you put into this point in the race, as has happened to me a number of times before. Last turn, really closing that gap now. See if we can get in the slipstream. There we go, tucked in behind.
Left side.
Go alongside, and we'll make a move on the last lap into the braking zone of turn 1.
Still there.
And we
left.
pulled ahead.
Captain Sloth.
Now we just have to hold it.
5 minutes of fuel remaining. Nice move, mate.
Almost running wide. Got a little bit outside of the track limits there.
Watch those lines.
Stayed out of the gravel. That's the important part. Not getting any kind of penalty for track limits violation, so really don't care. Into the hairpin for the last time in this race. Coming up to the section I have the most trouble with, but we've got enough of a gap that I'm confident we can defend. You really close that gap up right behind me. Trying to stay tight on the inside of the turn. So if they're going to make a move, they got to use the outside line. Getting close to the end of the lap now. Missed that apex by quite a bit. I can see them right in my mirror. Almost stepped it out there. Regained control. Coming up to the last couple of turns where I have the biggest advantage. something weird happening. We have it in the bag. So that was a close one that could have gone any way. Any small mistake would have ruined it. Last few laps were quite close, back and forth. Got undercut on the pit, had to fight for first again. Almost lost it stepping out the rear of the car, had to fight for first again, and almost had another incident, but held it. Any one of those things had gone a little bit worse, that would have been the end of the day. Could have ended up in the midfield or got a DNF, but instead we held it together, kept her cool, and ended up in P1 from P10. So a few reasons for that is Portimao is one of the tracks that I'm more familiar with in this sim, or of any track in any sim for that matter. I have more miles on this track than most of the other circuits that I'm familiar with. And even though I'm not that strong with the FR3, it's a really easy to handle car. Aside from right off the line, you do get some wheel spin, but otherwise it's very compliant. It's easy to turn in. It behaves really well throughout the turn. Good to get exits on. It's I think a lot easier to handle than the Tatuus F4 car that's a step below it in the Chain O formula. That was a really good race on my part. Made a few mistakes, but I really pushed hard where I knew I could. Another reason that was a lot easier, well, it looked a lot easier than it was, but why I was able to do that is because the previous season I was on adaptive AI, and I did a comparison and found out that my adaptive AI is probably around the 113, 114 AI level, so I was getting buried, and this is much easier. So there we have it. Portimao is finished, and thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.